Welcome everyone to our third relationship webinar. I'm holding my thing up here just to make sure everyone hears me. Today we're planning to talk about family relationships, how to have flourishing family relationships. And that includes, parents, kids, uncles, aunts, brothers, whoever's in your family. We're going to talk about. And this is all I want to say up front. I want to make sure that people realize that we are doing an in-person day-long seminar in Hartford, Connecticut on November 4th for the day, 10 in the morning till 5 at night. And I'll post, when I post this video, I'll post information about that as well. So we'd love to have people join us, and it'll just be more of the same of this kind of thing, and even better because we'll be in person. So I'm joined today. I'm Jill Whalen from whatdidyoudowithjill.com, and I'm joined again by my colleagues Christine Higgins and Lori Carpenos. And we're just going to get right in and start talking about relationships. I don't know if either of you would like to start, or if you have anything to say more.
What do you think, Christine? You want me to go or you?
Go for it, Lori.
Okay. Well, I'm the only one of the three of us that doesn't have children, right? So I'm going to talk about friends and siblings and all the people in, really, our friends are our family as well. And one of the things that I've really been seeing, well, first of all, I'm wondering from the two of you, Jill and Christine, if we should really start out explaining the background of what our seminar and all of these webinars are really pointing to, the innate health in all people. And
yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'm realizing that it's probably good to start a little bit at the beginning. And so our understanding about accessing health, psychological, emotional health within us comes from what is called the three principles based on mind, thought, and consciousness. And they're called principles because, like the principle of gravity, they're true no matter where we are on the globe and no matter who we are. So that makes the fact that we experience our thinking through our consciousness, and all of that is powered by not just our personal mind, but what we talk about as universal mind, that there's a creative intelligence that we are part of, it's part of us, but it is greater than our brain. So we talk in terms of the brain being the physical and mind being the formless energy behind everything. So whatever we talk about in our webinars or the seminar coming up on November 4th comes from that understanding. And as we have people joining us, we love to do interactive webinars. So if anybody has any questions, just let us know. So what I find through the years, as I've been pointing myself inward, so to speak, that's really the juice of life, where we see life unfolding through our own ability to create a human experience through thought. I like calling it the gift of thought. It's really an amazing gift to be able to get through life with thought and being able to be aware of what we think, be conscious of what we think. So as I've spent time just kind of being in awe of that, really, I wind up having insights. And one of those insights that's come to me recently is in relationships, people, I think, get this idea that a conversation is you listen to someone and then you agree with them or disagree with them. And what I find when people do that, there's not a great feeling that comes about from disagreeing with somebody, what somebody has to say. I find this in my family. You know, we'll sit around the Thanksgiving table and politics will come up or something that we disagree about. And I actually like that. A lot of, half the crowd turns the other way and they have this big thing about not talking about politics. But I like listening to other people's ideas. Even if I don't agree with them, I've found, though, that we can be agreeable and not have to agree. We can see things different. We can be in our own separate reality about things, but it doesn't mean we have to have the feeling of being disagreeable. That doesn't have a good feeling, and it doesn't come out well. It doesn't translate well in the room, in the feelings between people. It's like one person trying to outtalk the other and trying to make their point, which, that's good for a debate team, but not around a table with family or friends even. So maybe I'll come back to this insight about being agreeable even when you don't agree. I want to hear from Jill and Christine where you're at with families and relationships.
Go ahead, Christine, if you
Okay.
like.
Oh, I love how you started that off, Lori, because, wow, even now, I notice myself in conversation with people thinking, yeah, that's a good point. No, they see it wrong, being judgmental, lots of judgmental thinking. And it's useful to know that I don't have to take that judgment seriously. And that really is a game changer with everyone, but in particular with our family relationships. My children, believe it or not, see things very differently than I do. Can you imagine? What do you mean I can't have ice cream and cupcakes 3 meals a day? Like, yeah. And I make a lot of judgments about them. Not only do I make judgments about them, I also, in my mind, end up predicting a future for them. Like, oh, if they love video games that much right now and that's all they spend their time doing, then, they're not going to be successful. They're going to, end up living in the basement. They're going to rot their brains. They're just lots and lots of judgmental thinking. And it is so incredibly useful to know where that thinking's coming from, and to have that realization that if I act on that thinking, I'm acting on a fantasy. I'm not acting on reality, because I can't know what anyone's actions today will produce 15 years from now. That's impossible. And if I imagine my fantasies to be true, if I really believe that whatever it is I'm thinking, about the other person, any of those judgments, any of the things that I end up, creating around that, if I act as if that's true, then there's a huge separation, because I'm not acting in what's happening at the present moment. I'm acting out of a created imaginary thought that is not actually useful.
I'm curious, Christine, do you ask your kids what they think about time spent on video games? Like, I wonder what they would say. How old are they? I forget.
I have a 9-year-old girl and a 14-year-old boy. Yeah. Yeah. And we talk about it, and sometimes, and what we do at our house, what works for us, we do what we call experiments. And so we're like, okay, we'll have a discussion, we'll see where everyone comes out, and then we'll try experiments. And the kids can propose experiments, I can propose experiments, everyone can propose experiments. So I happen to homeschool my children, and so I assign them how much work they have to do for the school week. So we've even tried experiments where I said, okay, I'm not going to do a thing. This is the work you have to get done over the next 3 weeks. And I'm not going to tell you anything. This is what you have to do. You can have as much screen time as you want, and anything else, you can just try it. And what I love, and let me tell you, by week 2, when they'd pretty much done nothing but watch TV and play video games, I was very up in my head. I was like, oh. And it was really useful to see. Then I could just relax with the experiment, let it go, knowing that their lives actually wouldn't be ruined by 3 weeks of whatever they did that was, they weren't, physically, truly harming themselves. They weren't standing in the road in front of semi-trucks, And so we got to the end of the experiment, and I said, so how did that go? And it was interesting because they kind of saw that while they thought that, they also had created this reality for themselves, that if they got to play video games or do whatever they wanted always, that life would be awesome and they'd love it, and they'd, an outside-in model, right? If I get to, do X, Y, and Z, then I'll be happy and this will be fantastic. And so they saw a lot about how that image they'd created about having freedom was quite a lot different from the reality of having the freedom. And they were actually kind of more introspective, more willing to listen. They were happy, actually. Then they realized that they themselves didn't have the willpower, the motivation, whatever it was, that they saw that they weren't able to handle those two things. They weren't able to get all their work done. They got basically nothing done in 3 weeks. And so then we were able to sit down and have a completely different conversation. I said, okay, so now what makes sense to you? Now that we've tried that and that didn't work as well, and you didn't get your schoolwork done and this didn't happen, now what can we try? And so we kind of run our lives in experiments most of the time, because a lot of the times 2 things don't work forever. I think as humans, we like to kind of try something, and if it works, we're like, great, let's just stick with that. And we don't pay attention to the flow of life and how things change, and we get really stuck on doing something the same way. So yeah, we run experiments. We do something that works until it doesn't work, and then we have a conversation again and change it. And it seems to work really well for everyone. But it wouldn't be possible if I didn't realize where our separate realities were coming from. It wouldn't be possible, because it would be your kind of back to what you were talking about, Lori. The kids would be wrong, I would be right, and there would not be an agreeable middle. It would just be, you need to do what I say. And so it's been quite lovely, actually, and fun to see what they come up with, because they have their own innate wisdom too. And it's fun to get in that conversation and let their wisdom pop up and recognize it and see it for what it is.
That's the key there. I was going to say that it sounds like you're really seeing that, they have their, their innate wisdom and their innate health. So you can allow them to do that. Because, even if you allowed it for months on end, I think their wisdom would kick in, and, or, even like you said, they already saw it, but, and if we could see that more in everybody, with our kids and our parents and husbands and wives, and we instead of always thinking that we're right, that whole agreeable thing, like you said, Lori, it's so funny because our thoughts are so real to us, and they're just our own personal way of interpreting the world, but they just feel like the right way. And so it's sometimes so hard, especially with kids who we can boss around if we want, like it would be so easy and we do it a lot anyway, just try and no, this is how you do it. But then they don't learn, and they don't see how much they can use their own innate wisdom, because we're doing it for them, and which isn't going to work anyway. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's really fun. Oh, go ahead, Lori.
No, it's okay. You're going to say something?
Oh, I was just saying it's really fun because what comes out of them is so fresh and so spontaneous and so unpredictable that it's a trip. I mean, anyone who's spent, even if you don't have your own children, anyone who's spent any time around children, when they're just left to be, the creativity, the, the humor, the joy, the excitement, the curiosity. I mean, it's a waterfall, and it's really fun to see that flow.
And you have that opportunity with homeschooling to be able to do that as well, which is so nice. And my kids went to Montessori school when they were younger, and it was, they had more opportunity to be creative as well. And unfortunately, I feel bad for some of the students at traditional schools. They don't always have those opportunities. They're always being told what to do, which, well, it's a whole other story.
Yeah, being told what to do in 20-minute increments.
Yeah,
and I would bet too, when your children realize, Christine, that it's up to them, then it's coming through them. They're going to be way more involved, I would think, than the traditional sort of approach where, okay, here's your assignment and you have to do it by this date and you better start now. Because then their own thinking is going to get in the way, or they're not going to do a really great job. But because you gave them that leeway to experiment and find out for themselves what time is involved, and how they have to spread it out over a 2 or 3 week period, and I would think the results would be so much better because you're allowing them to see it for themselves. Kind of reminded me of George Pransky's story. Did you ever hear that story when his daughters, Kara and Erica, were younger? They wanted to stay up really late. So he said, okay, if you think that that's a good idea, and the very next night or 2 nights later, they stayed up late, they talked half the night, and they're having dinner 1 or 2 evenings later, and they're both like falling asleep in their soup. So, the following day, they both decided on their own to go to sleep at the originally planned bedtime. But, it's great. You let kids kind of experiment and find out for themselves rather than always being told how to do things and what to do. And then you can have a great conversation with them. And yeah.
And then there's nothing to rebel against. I find I don't get a lot of rebellion. I have a 14-year-old, and a lot of people are kind of struggling with this, early high school age. And I don't get that. He still comes up to me and, gives me spontaneous hugs even in front of his friends, and, talks to me about things he's up to and this and that. And so it's really, it's good for the kids, and it kind of takes away that tension, because I don't think anyone likes to be told what to do all the time. I know I don't.
Mm.
Yeah.
And
And that,
people, whether it's kids or, grown-up kids, they can feel the difference, between if you're seeing them as okay, and regardless of the
Mm.
way they're behaving, like they can sense that. And one of my daughters, she's 28 or something like that, but she's a little bit younger in maturity. She has some learning disabilities, but she can get so caught up in her frustration sometimes trying to tell me something or whatever it might be. And I used to, she used to make, like, I would get so frustrated myself, and we'd end up, in the screaming match with each other. And now, with what I know, when we're, if she's doing or saying things that I disagree with or don't understand or think is a little kooky, I just am so much more able now to just keep calm, keep present, even when I might have talked about this in another webinar, I'm not sure, but even if she might be swearing at me or anything like that. And before, that would just make me so mad. Kids can't do that to their parents, even if they're grown-up kids. That's the rule of society. And when I just don't react now, because I think subconsciously she was probably trying to get a reaction. If I don't react and just keep talking to her in a calm, present, just be present, it just goes away, and then she's back to smiling again, and we're friends. And it's like just being present with whoever our kids. I find the same thing with my mother, because she's my other hard problem, like I like to say, that because she too can seem to me to be a little kooky or whatever. And if I can just be present with her instead of getting mad or thinking she's wrong or thinking she's kooky, like it just changes the situation. It changes the conversation. It's amazing. Your presence, because if you're not in presence, you're in your head. You're in your thoughts. You're either in past or future, or you're thinking you're better than them, or better. And by being there and just there,
Yeah.
things are different.
yeah, it's really like reaching into their innate health and bringing that forward when you don't react. I love that you said that you just are there quiet. Your mind is quiet. You're not judging her. You're not reacting emotionally to her. And she settles down in that quiet that you're providing for her. And that really brings out the health in the other person. There's something about knowing that people, everyone, even your kids in their worst moments, they have innate health too. And there's something about knowing that takes the fear factor out of it, I think, where you're not afraid about what's coming next or how they're going to react.
And it's hard sometimes, because society tells us that's wrong. Like, you can't let someone talk to you that way, and even if it was not a kid, but anybody. But that's not always true. Like, who cares if they talk to you that way? It doesn't have to matter. It's just a made up cultural phenomenon that doesn't matter. And let it go, let it be, and things will change. And so, and then a lot of times too, the person may apologize in the end, or maybe they don't. But it doesn't. Again, it's just made up rules. Do we have any questions from the audience here? We have somebody else on. Would you like to be unmuted? Let me, Kantaga, it says is your name. I will. Oh, you are unmuted, I think.
It's the computer's name is Cantega. So my name is Brian O'Malley. Thank you for this opportunity. I met Lori in Los Angeles last October, and we were sitting on the couch with, I'm trying to think of his name, it's an Italian name and he was from Salt Spring, and he was a good friend of Sid's way back. Anyway.
At the conference, right. Yeah, I remember.
Did you have a question or a comment? Did you have a question or comment you'd like to, oh, I think you're muted again.
Yeah.
There, unmuted.
My father was the director of the Colorado State Parks. He designed and developed the Colorado State Parks. And he's since passed. But when he retired as the director of the state parks, he chose to be a volunteer in the schools, at the elementary schools. He even won the Volunteer of the Year award from the governor as his work as Grandpa O'Malley in the schools. Well, his first day of class, and it was a first grade class, and he's sitting at a table, at the small tables with the small chairs, and his knees are up by his ears, and he's listening to the orientation. And now here's a guy who was a World War II pilot, a landscape architect, an artist, a civil engineer, a respected leader of thousands, and pretty spun up in his thinking and feeling pretty out of place and insecure. And this little girl that was sitting next to him reached over and grabbed his arm and looked up at him and said, "Don't worry, it's a lot like kindergarten." She's thinking, what's with the big kid? But that moment, and I shared this story at a retreat we were facilitating last week, and I said, what leadership class, who do you want to take the leadership class from? My dad, with all his credentials and certifications and, a fantastic guy, or this little 6-year-old girl? In that moment, she had everything and had the presence of mind to reach out and literally touch someone and able to share her groundedness, if you will. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you. That's awesome.
I love that story. Thank you for sharing that with us. That's brilliant.
Yeah. Talk about, what a great example of innate health, 6-year-old teacher. Mm-hmm.
What else?
Well,
go ahead, Christine.
It's okay if you.
No, I was just going to say we've talked about kids, and I was wondering if maybe anyone had anything to share about other family relationships. But whatever you feel like sharing is awesome.
I was just going to say a little bit about presence, because it's. I've misunderstood it for a while, and it's relatively recently that I've kind of gained a deeper understanding. I really thought that presence meant that I had to not have anything on my mind, which then ends up a little bit more like a doing. And when I could see that I could have lots of personal thinking and still be present, because it's taking the personal thinking seriously that takes you out of the moment, that was helpful to me. And because it's still really easy, we can't stop the flow of thinking, right? It's always going to happen. And so to be present with someone and aware of someone without having to do anything else, without having to try to control the flow of thought and try to, quiet our minds or get in a quiet space or anything like that, it's much easier. It makes it much easier. So that's all I was just thinking of that little girl, and she was so present in that moment, you know. Who knows what she was thinking, but she was aware, you know, she saw this person who was, yeah, sweating it a little, and she was present with him. But we can't know what was in her mind, right? She could have had lots of thinking about it, but she was present at the same time.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Christine. She could have had a lot of thoughts about, you know, herself. She could have really been in her own head, thinking and feeling insecure as a result. So maybe if we talk a little bit about finding that place where you're fully listening, not just through your ears listening, but taking in other people around you, and rather than thinking about oneself. You know, I think that when we get caught up in ourselves and our ego, that it just really gets in the way of connecting with other people, no matter who the family member is or the friend is. That's a tricky thing. And it comes with a feeling, so that takes the trickiness out of it. If we pay attention to how we're feeling, you can tell when you're feeling insecure and you've got your mind on yourself, and when you don't have yourself on your mind at all and you're just in the game of life, just having a nice time with whoever is in your presence, even when they're not having a great time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because you know that it's a temporary condition, that it's not going to last forever. They're in a snit, they're in a mood, and they're upset, and it'll go away. It reminds me of when my niece, I have two nieces, they're now 14 and 15, but they must have been like, I don't know, 5 and 6. And we were at a diner, my brother, my sister-in-law, and the two girls, and the little one, Emma, had a hissy fit on the table. I don't know if she was hungry or what, but it was hysterical. Like, we all had to turn around so she wouldn't see that we were laughing, because she was so cute having this hissy fit where she took all the silverware and she just went like this with the place. And then it was over. It was over. We have no idea what happened. Maybe she was hungry. I don't remember. It was the funniest thing. But we go through that no matter how old we are. We have our little hissy fits, our reactions to things. And if nobody plays into it, it's over pretty quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's funny how kids can move through it, and we instead get into our heads as adults and hold on to, you know, whatever it is that made us mad, and, you know, can hold it not only for hours, but days, months, years. I mean, some people hold on to their anger for years and years instead of letting it pass through them, just like kids do. Like, I mean, you hardly ever see a kid that's, I guess it probably happens at a certain age, but that holds on to anger. You know, some friend made them mad, and the next day they're back playing with them again. It's how the flow of life. If we let life flow through us like that, instead of trying to just getting all caught up in our head and believing, no, we have to hold on to this. And what you were saying before, Christine, too, about the presence, and not trying to, not necessarily like just not believing the thoughts. Like, there's nothing to do there. I find I have a Facebook anxiety group that are people who have read my book, and it's, you know, every question, God love them, every question is, you know, what do I do? How can I stop this? You know, and it's a simple matter of, when you know that those thoughts don't really mean anything, they're just thoughts, they're just energy passing through you, they're much more likely to not get stuck and to pass through us. But it's the same with any thoughts we have about our family members or anything. There's nothing to do. We can't stop those thoughts from coming. They come, whatever they come, who cares? But they're just thought. They're not, we don't have to believe them. They're not who we are. We are what's underneath those thoughts. We are that wisdom, that innate health, that all knowing, loving love being that's underneath it all. And that's where if we come from there, where we're present and can be the most helpful to anybody and ourselves.
Yeah, that's great, Jill. I'm thinking of what Sid Banks used to say, that I think it's in the missing link, that if we could just not be afraid of what we think, right? Just what you said, it just is thoughts passing through us without any intrinsic meaning. We're the ones who stamp the meaning on what we're thinking. So we make meaning out of these thought energies that pass through us. We can think about what we think. We have that capacity. And maybe that's why kids can be so resilient and bounce back so easily. They can't be bothered thinking about what they're thinking. It comes, it goes, it comes, it goes.
Yeah.
Who cares? And when there is something to care about, and there is, like we have to keep our refrigerator stocked, and we have to make sure we have toilet paper, all those things, and make sure we have gas in the car, and we set the alarm at the right time. So when we have to care about those things, we do. It's an automatic process of just taking care of business. But it's all the other stuff, the ego stuff, that we wind up caring about, like, how dare she speak to me that way, or isn't that nervy that that person would say that. And when you realize that the way they're speaking to you or treating you is coming from them, their thinking, their state of mind, you can't take it personally anymore. That's the beauty of one of the beautiful things about these principles is you see that it's an inside out world, and whatever somebody else is talking about or upset about is coming from them. Yeah, you want to listen. You want to listen for any grain of truth that you can clean up or explain. As a therapist, there are so many couples that come and families that come because of a misunderstanding. People just simply misunderstood. They took something the wrong way. They took it personally, and it wasn't meant that way at all. So, listening we're going to do that in our seminar, some listening. We're going to go more into that in the seminar, but just, for now, it's just so valuable to really be able to listen to somebody without judgment, without having your own thinking on your mind, your own agenda on your mind, and just try to see where they're coming from, how they're seeing things, their worlds, their separate reality.
Yeah, knowing that they're coming from their own thought in the moment, and and that's why it may sound a little whatever to you, like just there's no reason to take offense or or be hurt or whatever, because they're just feeling their thinking in the moment, and sometimes they're saying it out loud to us or whatever, but it's we all have those thoughts. We just sometimes are in a better place to not say them out loud to someone, and sometimes we're not. And that's the same with anybody else. Who among us hasn't said or done something to somebody else that we regret, or that we shouldn't have done, and we know better, and yet when someone does it to us, suddenly we have to be up in arms over it, but they're just doing the same thing we've done a million times before, and it's it's okay. It's normal. That's the way life works. But we could sure get along a lot better if both people in the relationship knew that oh, they're just caught up in their thinking right now. It has nothing to do with me, and that's very hard for people to get. But when you can see that whatever they say, whatever they do, it has nothing to do with me, it's helpful. It's very helpful.
Yeah, I love a word Lori used, which was impersonal, because thought is impersonal. There's no, I don't go and set the machine that says, okay, I'm going to have these kinds of thoughts today. It bubbles up and it leaves. It bubbles up and it leaves, and it's completely impersonal. And so when you get that it's that impersonal, not only for yourself, but for the other person, they also have their impersonal source of thought that's just coming up and coming up and coming up. It's like we all have our own spring, we're tapped into this spring of thought, and it's always going to be coming up, and it's not personal. It's a completely impersonal source of thought. And then it's just how much attention you give it. It's really pretty simple. But so many people don't know that. And so they take their own thinking personally, and they take everyone else's thinking personally too. Yeah.
Because it's so opposite of what we've all been led to believe, what we grow up thinking. It's so opposite. So that part's really, really hard to think, like, how can it be impersonal? It's my thoughts. Sounds like me.
Yeah.
Right. It looks like me in my mind. And yet that's so key. Like just if people would just seek evidence of that, of instances where their thoughts just make no sense and are just not true at all. And so, like, why would we bother to listen to them? If you see it in a few instances, it's easier to at least, if nothing else, be suspect of all thought. That when that's where I've been lately, or just realizing that, wait a minute, I've had too many of these thoughts that makes no sense. I really need to be they all have to be under the microscope, because there's something wrong here. These thoughts just aren't true. And the more you see it that way, you can start to ignore them and just be like, whatever, you go up there and be crazy.
Yeah.
like you usually are, and I'll just get on with life. And that it's so that's just so helpful.
Yeah. It's like the heart beating, right? It's my heart and it's beating, but I don't take any credit for its beating. I don't, do any, it's not like, ooh, I got a good heartbeat today, It's just like, it just does. It's just always flowing. And yeah. So
it's so helpful to know, to see this. It's really so helpful in relationships. I mean, I can't imagine having this inside out understanding and having a relative that I don't talk to for years on end. But there are so many people in the world who cut off their relatives over just different ways of seeing something for years, absolutely years. Every so often, I get to see a reunification of people who haven't communicated in a long time, and that's really thrilling. Yeah. And half of the time, they don't even remember everything that led up to this separation.
Isn't that interesting? They stayed separate and they don't even remember why.
Yeah. They know they did something or said something mean or whatever, can't talk to them anymore. And what a shame and what a waste, especially when it had nothing to do with them in the first place. Someone's in a low state of mind, said something dumb or whatever, mean, and now they're not being talked to. I mean, I used to have that happen to me actually all the time, not with relatives, but people would, I didn't even know, like my I didn't, I don't know, whatever. I just would say things that were on my mind. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to. I never learned that. And I would have, people in my family or friends or whatever that would be mad at me, and I didn't know why, all because of separate realities. To them, I was being offensive. To me, I'm like, I don't care. Like, if you said the same thing to me, I would just think it was funny. And so it's really perplexing when you're the one who doesn't get mad, or who doesn't know that they're not supposed to say things. Like, it's confusing and it's perplexing and it's sad, because like the last thing, most people who say something mean, the last thing they want to be is mean. Like, they don't want to be mean. Like, I don't know any human beings who really want to be mean. They may end up being that way inadvertently because they're saying what's on their mind, but nobody wants to be mean. And if we could see that, and give them the benefit of the doubt that they probably didn't mean it the way we took it, it would be really helpful. I wish that the people that I've pissed off in my life would have known this. And I mean, obviously I've learned myself now too, to filter myself a little better too in my older age. But I still get people mad.
Well, I was a mean kid, Jill. Growing up, I was a meanie. And it's horrifying, to look back what I did to my poor mother. She did not deserve that. But I was really shy, and I had a lot of pent up anger and upset and, sadness and depression. And who did I let it out on? My poor mother.
Mm. But did you like think you were purposely trying to be mean? Like, again, you were probably inadvertently just letting it out.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I mean, you weren't a mean kid. You just were someone who was frustrated.
Right.
And that was the same with me. I think, it came across as mean. I mean, there's a lot of psychological stuff there.
Yeah. Isn't that true? It's frustration. Right? In the background.
Insecurity, yep, all those things. And right, so take it out on the people closest to you. That's why husband and wives, I think, people who loved each other more than anything in the world end up, I mean, it can be the most hated relationship in some cases, which is kind of so crazy. But it's because we get comfortable maybe with those people, and so we say and do things that we probably wouldn't say or do to other people, which is why people think, oh, they have the best relationship, and then but they're not seeing what goes on behind closed doors.
Yeah,
I think it's particularly true too of the parent-child relationship, because there's a lot of in many households, I know there are some that do not fit this, but in many households, there's a security in the parent-child relationship. Like, even as an adult, I know that my mother loves me unconditionally. Like, I'm clear on that. And I've been clear on that for a very long time. And so, yeah, I have said things to her that I wouldn't say to anyone else, because there's no fear of that, because of that, it feels safer, kind of a little bit like you were talking about, Lori. Like, that was a place where it felt safer to express yourself. I know better now, and also I see it with my daughter. She'll be behaving quite beautifully, with her aunt and her uncle, or, whoever she's with. And then even my husband, her father, but because she's closest to me, as soon as I show up, then I get the backlash, of whatever has been going on for her. Yeah, we do that, and quite frequently in our closest relationships.
Taking it out on those we love, right?
Mm-hmm.
that's so helpful to know as the parent. Like now that you're saying that, that's exactly what my daughter does. The one that I was saying, who sometimes will swear at me and stuff. That's all she's doing, and it's funny because you can get the image of them in your head that they're just this mean kid and that swears at everybody and does this stuff because that's what they maybe tend to do to you. But then I remember with my daughter when she was in high school, like, I had this certain image of her, and then to see her graduating high school and just watching her with the other kids and the teachers, like it was like a different person. Like I was like, oh my God, she was a leader and she was all these things that I just didn't know about her. Like it was such an eye opener. I wish I had known it sooner because it could have helped my relationship with her at the time, to see her differently. Because just when you said that, Christine, that just made me remember that, because that's all she was doing. Just because she felt comfortable with me, she would let off the steam, and she didn't act like that in school. Surprise, surprise. Who knew?
Yeah.
Something just crossed my mind, and I know we don't have a lot of time left tonight, but a lot of what is on parents' minds, especially with older children now, is the prevalence of drug abuse. So maybe we could just touch on that. My understanding of that is kids looking for an escape from what goes on in their mind, their upsets and they're freaking themselves out. Worries. Kids have so many worries that, wow.
Another whole, maybe we should do another webinar.
I know, that just crossed my mind.
Yeah, I mean, that whole addiction thing, I mean, that was me. I mean, I started drinking alcohol at a really early age, like 14, and it was because I was shy and introverted and seeking to just feel better, and it worked. But I didn't realize that the thoughts were creating my feelings until then. But that's what, yeah, so many kids, there's so many stresses that they're believing are coming from the outside world, and so drugs are readily available, alcohol is readily available, they go for it if they only knew.
Exactly. So it's this external substance that they're using to calm themselves down, not realizing that they have that capacity, that ability to do that themselves, just by not taking their thoughts so seriously.
Yeah.
That's all it takes. Free of charge, and you still have all your brain cells intact.
And that's what's happening anyway. When you have the alcohol or the drugs, it's just your thoughts are changing, or dissipating, or you just don't care as much, or you're not paying as much attention to them. That's all that's happening. And we have the natural chemical factory in our own bodies. We can create that same feeling without the drugs. When you see that through an insight, game changer.
How did things change for you, Jill?
It's a whole, it's all in my book. My book, which is called, I always forget the name, Victim of Thought, Seeing Through the Illusion of Anxiety. That's really what the book is about, my whole seeing of all that stuff, the anxiety and how it was causing my addictions and everything else. But it came through insight. It came through mega insight. So we probably should wrap this up here. Right now, this was our last one of the series. Maybe we'll do another before the seminar. We can talk about that. But the seminar again is going to be about all kinds of relationships. A full day, November 4th, a Saturday in Hartford, Connecticut. I will post the information where to sign up. It's only $110, and actually anybody who watches this webinar will give you a discount, $10 off, I think it is, if you put in the coupon code of awesome, because we're talking about awesome relationships, having awesome relationships. So if you watch this webinar, you're welcome to use that code and save a little money. And we hope to see you there. Any parting words, anybody else?
Thank you so much for hosting this, Jill. Yeah. I
Oh,
always
yeah, my
feel so
pleasure.
confident in the technology of it. Oh, good, Jill's
Don't
doing
say
it.
it.
It'll work out. Yeah. So thank you. I really appreciate it. And both of you, Christine, too, you know, there's so much that goes on behind the scenes to putting out a seminar, you know, the PDF and the flyer and getting it into people's hands, because and I think the two of you would probably say the same thing. Even all the books that I read, Sid's books, Three Principles books, things really came together for me in the seminars I sat in.
Mhm.
Something about being in one place for a full day. And Chris, you're just back from a 3-day, right? Or was it 3.5
Yeah.
days?
It
Yeah,
was 3 days, and it's a completely different experience. It's even different from being with someone one-on-one, you know, like in a one-on-one coaching experience or something like that, because there's more in the room, and and even hearing other people's experiences often give you, you know, you end up insight bubbles up from what other people say. And so I think seminars are fantastic. They're my favorite way to learn.
So we hope you guys will join us, whoever's watching this. Hartford's a beautiful place in the early November. There should probably still be some foliage maybe, but it should be nice. The weather should be still mostly okay. All right. So thanks everybody. Thank you guys for doing this. And thank you, whoever is watching. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop.